Okay, this is my video response to Brene Brown's TED Talk for this week. It's a little late, but I watched it twice, and I just kind of made notes the second time of some things that I just thought were worth talking about. The first being just what she does, qualitative research. I thought was an interesting field that maybe gets not thought of, I guess. When we think of research, when I think of research, I think of quantitative stuff. I think of science and math and stuff like that. So I think applying research to this field or social work or people in general and studying emotions and comparing and contrasting and researching and hypothesizing based off of emotions and stuff like that, I found very fascinating and very interesting in general. I thought definitely something of interest for the future. I wrote down one of my notes is her talking about asking about a topic and they tell you a story about the opposite. I thought it's something that I've definitely seen before or heard before, and I thought that was just a cool topic because it's something that she touched on that I definitely could had experiences just talking to anybody before. When you ask about something, they're going to tell you about the worst possible scenario regarding whatever you ask about. In general, I guess I'm going to kind of combine a couple of things. I found her claims in the video to be very profound and very personal, but I also think that based off of people's personalities, in the way that she describes happiness, or let's see what kind of wholeheartedness or happiness or feeling good and feeling full, I think the way she describes it, I think it makes it very attainable for extroverted people. So like for me, for instance, I consider myself an extrovert, and I don't really have a problem talking about my emotions, talking about different things, opening up to people, opening up to therapists or my family or my friends. I used to have more trouble with it. Now I do a lot better with it. But I couldn't help but think about people who aren't as likely to talk to a therapist, people who aren't as likely to be so readily available to become vulnerable. I couldn't help but think of them in her during the video, and I know that she notes how it is hard. It's not an easy process to kind of work through this kind of like mental challenge of doing this. And furthermore, her point of when she said she was going to a therapist, I wrote she wanted the answers to how to feel good, vulnerable, wholehearted, without wanting to be vulnerable or open. And I think that's kind of like the basis of what I'm trying to say, is that these people, or anybody, I feel like it's anybody that struggles with this kind of personal dilemma, isn't going to be the kind of person. It's like just like a lot of things that she seems to address as a cycle, kind of as a cycle in itself of you have to be vulnerable to an extent to embrace vulnerability, which sounds weird, but I just think to then become to embrace these feelings of wholeheartedness and fullness. And I would love some other people's input. I know it's kind of late me posting this about just how they feel. If you consider yourself an introvert, or if you've never talked to a therapist, and this is such a personal subject that the people that I feel like would have the most insight on this topic aren't the people that are going to reply. The kind of people that reply to these kind of videos or take this kind of advice are not the kind of people that need this advice, I feel like. Another cycle, I'm kind of bouncing from notes to just freehand, but another note that I took that I just wanted to address was this cycle of numbing, looking for meaning, feeling vulnerable when you look for meaning, and then numbing again. I thought was very profound, and it's so applicable. I could talk for minutes or hours about the things like over medication, addiction, stuff like that. But I think she talked enough about it. But it kind of also just brought me back when she started talking about medication, stuff like that, or addiction. Just recently, I watched this documentary called "Dying in Vain." Vain being VEIN. It was a documentary about the opioid crisis in America, and it kind of followed a group of opioid users, somebody who's recovering, a family who is dealing with the death of a family member due to opioids, and kind of like the medical care system part of it. But in the documentary, they address this feeling of shame that people can have, and how people can feel depressed or feel down, turn to something, many steps between this and then that, but then turn to something like drugs. And then once they've been labeled as drug users or addicts or junkies and stuff like that, that there's this inherent feeling of shame and low to no expectations for them that degrades their self-worth to a point where it's, once again, a cycle where you feel shameful, you don't want to do anything, there's no expectations. Okay, well, if drugs are the only thing that makes me feel good, then I'll do that. Kind of an outsider point, kind of indirect, but I thought that was just, I couldn't help but think of it when she was talking about shame and vulnerability, and opening up is just so hard for people. I guess that was my biggest takeaway. I'm going to try to wrap things up. Was just, I loved this video. I thought this is great advice. She is an amazing speaker. But I think I would love to hear maybe a follow-up about practical ways to pursue vulnerability. And so I want to hear about ways that real-life people who struggle with feelings of wholeheartedness or self-worth can actively do things in everyday or mindset changes or maybe mantras, just anything, to actively change their mindset and not just this idealistic roadmap she's laid out. I would rather have like a practical, this is how this is done. And I might actually just look into some research of hers just because I really found her to be quite the speaker and really just an awesome person. But that was really my biggest thing, was that I think this was easily digested by maybe extroverted people, but I think introverted people who struggle with these kinds of problems with self-worth are going to be the people who need it the most, but I think they're also going to be the people that are least likely to practice it. So I would really like to hear some more ways of how to practically every day deal with the struggle of self-worth and move forward, move past it to kind of achieve this sense of self-worth. That is my response. Thanks for anybody who watches. I really do enjoy these. I hate that I've made like two of them late now. But thanks for watching.